Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I am your host, Maryann Petri. You can find me, my books, and blogs on dismantlingfamilycourtcorruption.com. The book, Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, came out in 2020, followed by Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth, followed by Raised by These Wolves, How Family and Federal Courts Are Failing Our Children, followed by Raised by These Wolves, Volume 2, which came out July 19th of 2024, Child Trafficking Through Foster Care and the Court Systems. And please feel free to buy me a coffee to help keep this podcast going. I've got a brand new guest. I have Brad Kopczyk on. He is a dad. He's a New York City firefighter and targeted father, judicially abused by the New York State Family Court System in Putnam County, New York, and by several attorneys in the area, including those who he hired to represent him. A father of a now 6-year-old boy and also a product of divorce himself at a young age, he has enjoyed the outdoors. He's a self-taught mechanic. He loves music. He had been married for 3 years, and his case was intentionally drug out by the attorneys, and the pandemic didn't help either. And his case is over now, but we're going to talk about what got you in there, Brad, in the first place.
Well, good afternoon, Maryann, and thanks for having me on. Um, well, how'd I end up in there? I guess because I had a spouse who wasn't willing to talk with me or settle any issues between her and I. We tried mediation, which was a discussion when this all happened. Um, and that didn't work. Um, there were some things that happened after that where I was being withheld my child from me to try to go pick up my son on days that I was off, and it wasn't happening. I filed, about 5 police reports with the local police department, and kind of after that, when I was really understanding that, you know, there was going to be no agreeing here on anything if I couldn't get any communication to talk about issues, that this was going to be a long haul. I didn't really know where else to go. I reached out to the mediator at the time and I explained what was going on. And she basically terminated our session and said, "This isn't going to work. It takes two to have mediation work." And yeah, I didn't really, that was it. At that time, I reached out and asked, you know, she terminated our session. If you want to continue this, please let me know. I got no communication from that. So I didn't, after reaching out several times for several weeks, asking for how you want this, how do you want this to, do you want to do this amicably, or do you want to do, this is the easy route, or do you want to make it very complicated? Because I don't want the complicated route. This doesn't need to be complicated. Um, and I got no answer from that. So I really didn't have any other choice but to file for divorce in my county. And that's kind of where it all stemmed from.
Mhm. Now, when you filed those police reports when your child was being withheld from you, um, did you file an offense report or was it an incident report because of the custodial interference?
Yeah, it was mostly just uh, an incident report on a custodial interference, and they don't want to get involved. They'll just say, well, you need to talk to an attorney on this, and um we don't, there was no uh there was no parenting agreement or order or anything of that nature. And we did have some scheduling things that we were in the making, that was happening, but it was just mostly incident reports, and they didn't want to do anything. They just said, well, you know, we just can make an incident report, and you have to speak to an attorney and give the copies to the attorney.
Because, I mean, through this podcast, what I have learned is that this custodial interference is a felony. And there's actually laws on the books for over 40 years if for in the penal codes for police to follow these if a parent isn't being allowed to see their child. And and they're not trained on this at the police academy. So I guess I'm letting everyone know that when you go to the police department and you're not being allowed to see your kid, you file an offense report.
Yeah, and at the time,
Who
I mean, I
knows?
had nobody to talk to, you
Right.
know.
I didn't either. I'm with you.
Yeah. So you think you're doing the right thing. You think
Mhm.
that making incident reports and having it, um, having it written down or in an incident report, you know, would be would be valid of something, but in the end, they didn't really care. I submitted those police reports and documented the incidents that happened, and basically they just turned a blind eye to it and didn't really care, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, they don't know about these laws. And it's a shame because they've been in those books for well over 40 years.
Yeah, there. I know New York State has custodial interference, laws on the books. From my reading, though, and from what I can remember, I mean, this is going back, a couple years. This was around 2020. That it didn't say parent in the wording. It's from what I can remember, it said um guardian or something of that nature. If a family member were to do it, um then that would be considered custodial interference. Now, I met with an attorney out of Newburgh, and I just did a consultation with them. And basically, she said, "Well, she can do that. There's she can do that. There's no, unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about it. She's a parent, and they can get away with it." And I just was just like dumbfounded,
Oh,
like that's okay. So yeah, so when I filed in Putnam County, I went through the Supreme Court and got the paperwork from the town clerk's office, and try to fill it out to my best of my ability. And that's kind of where I initiated the action, because mediation didn't work. I wasn't getting any communication from my spouse that she wanted anything to do with being amicable. So I really didn't know where else to turn, you know, and that's kind of when things went downhill from there.
it's a shame when that happens. Um, this happens to a lot of people that are separating, going through a divorce. It's just, I don't know what to say. Everyone's going through it. And when you both had attorneys, what happened next?
Um, well, that's when the dragging out process began,
Mm-hmm.
because I initially hired an attorney to do some paperwork. I didn't hire an attorney to cause litigation, to drag this out. I My intention was to hire him was I needed to get paperwork done, It was uncontested at the time. I was under the impression. Now there's seven different ways in New York State to file a divorce, and it's under DRL 170. And those are different ways of the different means of there was abandonment was one, cruel and inhumane treatment was one, incompatible, not being able to be compatible as spouses for the last 6 months was one, and there was a few other ones. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I know it's DRL 170. But when I hired the guy, he was a local attorney, very close to the courthouse. And I just really wanted for paperwork and to try to get emails sent to him and to try to get through stuff and send him this. It just seemed to me that they were playing stupid right off the bat. Oh, I didn't get that. Now you're paying an attorney every time you send an email. Well, I can you resend that again? I didn't get that. Or I would email them and saying, I need to know what progress is being made. I'm sorry, I'm working on another case. I'll get back to you. Just stuff like this that would just drag it out. You could just tell that someone seemed they didn't care. They were just dragging their feet. They didn't care. They were just dragging their feet. That and then he contacted I don't know how it happened. I think they were served with the divorce action. Initially they were served with it. I found out that my ex had an attorney at the time. He contacted my attorney. I think it was through an email that she sent me or something. And again, it was, her just me saying, this guy's John McCarran. This is who he is. And, I get a phone call from him saying her attorney's playing hardball. And I said, oh God, here we go.
Oh no.
Like, what does that mean? I don't know what that means. I guess he's gonna try to rake me over the coals for everything I can. That was my interpretation of it. That he was gonna play hardball and not agree to anything. That's my definition of playing hardball. I'm not gonna agree to anything until I get what I want. And so I just went from one attorney to the next because I pretty much fired the guy after 6 months. I wasn't getting anywhere. Went to another guy, found out later that he was very good friends with her attorney. So I didn't find out till later in the game. And so it just snowballed. The whole thing just snowballed. When you think one guy's another guy's gonna be different, or another attorney's gonna be different. It's all the same stuff. You give them what you have. You give them evidence of custodial interference. You have documentation of it happened on this day, and this day. And nothing was said about it. It was, I wouldn't say it wasn't, it was, but it was ignored by the court,
Right.
So it just, and then her attorney tried to change the venue, which he knew that it was filed in Putnam County. He tried to change the venue, and that created 6 months of unnecessary paperwork, which he tried to get it drugged into Westchester County because that's where my spouse lives. So it would be more convenient for him to travel. I'm guessing. I don't know the answer to that, but it would be easier for him to travel because he's only a few blocks away and he wouldn't have to drive, and it would make it easier for him. But he made, probably, I would say 4 months to 6 months of unnecessary paperwork and going through this and filing motions to try to change the venue for no reason when he knew that it was already initiated in my county. But
Mm-hmm.
I felt like that was just his way of creating billable hours, you
Mm-hmm.
know, creating more conflict and more billable hours in the process. When he knew that he knew that was in Putnam County. So I had to spend thousands of dollars on an attorney to get that stopped. And in the end, it was. But, you know, the game started showing very shortly during that whole thing. And it just seemed impossible to, like, when is this going to end? You know, is this,
Mm-hmm.
you know, when you think you hire an attorney to be on your side, they're not on your side.
Mm-mm.
Um,
Mm-mm.
they're going to create as much conflict between you and them and her attorney to try to make as much money. If attorneys actually had to resolve issues, because in my case, I was only married 3 years. There wasn't anything. There wasn't joint really. It was one joint bank account, but um, we had switched that into her name, so it was very hard to prove that at the time. But there was no loans on the vehicles. There was no, um, you know, a home and you know the title was in our names. There was none of that. It was
Mm-hmm.
I had my own account. She had her own account. She had her own stuff. I had my own stuff. There was really nothing, you know, there was really nothing to fight over that, you know, with that. It was just now we have a kid. Now we have a child in the middle of this. And
Mm-hmm.
that was the biggest, you know, that was the biggest hurdle to, you know, I went into, and I know you probably want to ask some questions. I went in on an emergency. When I filed the paperwork initially, I went in on an emergency, um, uh, I don't know whatever they call it when you go in front of the judge, you know, on emergency
A petition.
motion.
Okay.
Yeah, it was like an emergency motion, and I just went in plain clothes because I went in right after I did it. And he basically said, "Well, is the other party present?" And you know, the answer was no. And okay, well, we're gonna assign an attorney for the child. And I'm thinking, attorney for the child? What do
Right.
we need? My child at the time in 2020 was not even. He was probably a year and a half old. Um, 18, 19, yeah, about a year and a half old.
Oh,
What does an attorney need? What does a one and a
right.
half year old need an attorney for?
Right. Money.
Money. Exactly. It
Mm.
was, we're going to get another attorney involved so she can get paid and cause more problems. And this is how I saw the whole thing. Um, you know, and then the attorney at the time said to the judge, um, well, can you make sure make sure we get a good one? And I'm thinking to myself, good one? What does that mean?
Yeah.
What does that mean? Are, are they aren't they supposed to be good? I mean, apparently not, you know, and I didn't know what that meant. Um,
Oh, that's
so it
maddening.
kind of just spiraled out of control from there.
Hmm. Right. These third party parasites, such as attorneys for children, AFCs, guardian ad litems, JALs, really, I don't believe they're really needed. They're just third party parasites that will also drain the parent and their finances.
Yeah, yeah. And what I didn't know at the time was there is a New York State rule, court rule, and I can't cite the rule, but it's in the New York State Supreme Court rules where one party within 30 days or 45 days can disagree or make make you know voice their opinion that they don't agree with it. They don't want a child attorney involved, but nobody ever told me that. And my attorney at the time never even told me that, or no judge, we don't need a child attorney involved. It was just like, oh yeah, let's just get them involved, and then let's just do that. Yeah, that sounds good.
Mm.
I mean, there was no, you
Thought or
know,
care.
yeah, it was just, I guess, just that's just the typical way they operate. We're just going to get these people involved and these people involved, and meanwhile, I didn't need an attorney. My spouse didn't, as married, as we were married at the time prior to 2020, we didn't need attorneys involved to raise our child.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't need attorneys involved to make decisions for what was in the best interest of our child. We did that ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
You know, um, her parents, her mother was able to watch a child when I was at work and when she was at work. She would work 5 days during the week, Tuesday through Saturday. So, the child would be with her mother, and then if I was working overnight, she would pick him up and from her mother's house, and that's just how it worked. There was no question. There was no questioning it. We just did what we had to do,
Mm-hmm.
like every other family does in this situation before you get divorced. You just figure it out. There's
Right.
no playbook. There's no instruction book on what you had to do. You just did whatever you had to do to make it work.
Mm-hmm.
So, but
Did,
when, yeah, go ahead.
oh, I was going to say, did you follow? Well, did they make you follow through with the AFC, or were you able to not?
Well, one was appointed, and in the beginning, um, it was a female. She contacted me and seemed like she was going to, be unbiased and hear both sides. But then it became when there was I remember we had a Zoom hearing one day. She says, "Oh, Judge, well, I've been in contact with the mother and her family, and spoke with the child." And I'm thinking, well, this is new news to me. I didn't know about this.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm thinking to myself, well, did you talk to you know, did you talk to my mother? My mother doesn't live with me, but
Mm-hmm.
she could have asked for my mother if she
Mm-hmm.
wanted to talk to my mother, and she says, "Oh, I've been in contact with a child a couple times, and I've been over at the house." And I'm like, well, she's never been at my house, so this seems kind of
Yeah.
prejudice, like
Mm-hmm.
one-sided here, because this is you've been at you've spoken with the mother and the child when she's only a year and a half, so you can't speak to the child, right? So I had some couple fathers' rights advocates involved at the time, and one said, well, there's a lot of uh I was reading some things too, and it was about the rules of responsibilities of attorney for the child and what they're supposed to do, and if they can't, they have to speak advocate for the child's wishes, and but if the child can't speak and he can't do that, then how can you be unbiased, and how can you um speak the child's wishes when the child can't even speak? At that point, it becomes, well, I think is, I'm just going to do what I think is right, or
Mm-hmm.
what's best, right? But she did admit to me that she never had any sons. She had like five sisters, so that was kind of alarming that she would sit here and email me and kind of lecture me about my home being uncomfortable, or my home should be comfortable for my child. And I'm thinking to myself, you had five sisters. What do you know about raising a boy?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You've never been to my house. How can you make a statement like, my home's uncomfortable, or my home should be comfortable? I'm sorry, but my ex-wife would lived in my home, and my child was raised in this home.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't uncomfortable then, but now all of a sudden it's uncomfortable. So
Mm-hmm.
I just, it's just the things that they were saying were as if you didn't know any better, and they were just degrading kind of comments.
Yeah.
Um, and that kind of really, got my emotions kicking, and you start getting angry at these people. Like, who are you? You've
Right.
never met me a
Right.
day in your life. You've never met me a day in your life, and you're sitting here making unnecessary derogatory comments about me. You don't even know me. You haven't even been outside of a Zoom meeting with me. Um,
Mhm.
it just that was my experience for the entire 3 years
That's
with
horrible.
with
And
everybody.
and some of these AFCs, attorney for the children, third party parasites, some of them don't even have kids of their own.
That's right. Some don't. Yep. And so it's I mean, I ended up having delivered. So I spoke with an advocate. Um, his advice was, well, you know, try to get your AFC dismissed, and you know looking back, I don't know that that was good advice. I maybe on his end because he had success with it, and he knew how to do it. But there's a way, and if I could go back, there's a way to um, deal with them, and the way to talk to them. Um, but from my understanding, trying to get a GAL or AFC dismissed on a case is nearly impossible. They're all friends with the judges.
Mm-hmm.
They hang out with the judges. They're all in bed with each other.
Mm-hmm.
They all know each other. Um, so
Yeah.
uh, I tried to do that. Um, I had to deliver something via mail to serve my order to show cause when I did that, and you know the houses that these attorneys live in aren't average homes. They're multi-million dollar houses. So what does that say about them? You know,
Mhm.
um, they're not small homes. you
Right.
know,
Right.
um, so they're making hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars a year off this kind of stuff. It's just kind of deplorable, in my opinion.
Well, it's like a kids for cash.
Right. And I felt that's how it was, because I spoke to a lot of people during my case. So my case started in January of 2020 was when I initiated the action, and I submitted because I was financially drained, emotionally drained, physically drained. I was going through a lot of health issues. I had lost a lot of weight, and I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't take it anymore. And I figured, how much more of this do I have to keep going before they come after my house? Because I knew that was probably going to happen if I didn't
Hmm.
just say, you know,
Right.
done. What, you know, all I kept hearing was, you're going to get screwed,
Mm.
this and that. And yeah, I mean, it's a war of attrition. It's a game to them, right?
Right.
Um, who can, who can, what attorney can drain you financially the fastest and wear you down the fastest?
Hmm.
And I think, in my opinion, whoever had the most money was going to win, because it comes down to money. Now, my ex wasn't paying her attorney's fees. She has wealthy parents, who voluntarily did that for her, and so that was kind of unfair playing field there. You know, She claimed that she was only making 21,000. I know she made more than that, but she claimed in um, her statement of net worth that she made $21,000, but she had $5,000 or $4,800 in expenses per month. Well, how is that possible? Do the math,
Right.
right? You have $4,800 a month in expenses. You got to make more than 21,000, but that would never come out. That would never come out, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And she and what was also uh, um, acknowledged on the statement of net worth is that she paid for psychotherapy.
Hmm.
Well, if you look up the definition of psychotherapy, it's pretty black and white what it means. And of course, I tried to use that to, you know, say this is why we're in here, and um, you know, I these behavioral patterns um are alarming to me, but you know, I didn't use the word behavioral patterns. And if I were to advise anybody that is doing this pro se, is to use words like that, behavioral patterns, or the minute you say mental health issues,
Mm-hmm.
they're gonna slam the gavel on you
Mm-hmm.
and order a psychological um a psychological forensic evaluator on you. They did to me, they did to her, and they wanted one on our son, who was probably two, maybe at that point, two and a half. You want a psychological evaluation on a 2-year old?
Now
Like, you
there's,
people are
yeah,
sick.
yes. Ah,
So the minute that I said, there was a lot of custodial interference things going on, and I was trying to get the AFC dismissed at the time, and I was just furious over everything that was going on. And I wrote a motion, or I said something in the motion about mental health issues. She's keeping my son away from my family during COVID, and no rational, reasonable person. Obviously, she admits to psychotherapy, and she obviously has some mental health issues. As soon as I said that, bam, I'm
mhm.
ordering a psychological forensic evaluation on you, uh, you know, the defendant and the child. That was in an order.
Mm.
And I said, you got to be kidding me. And so I started looking up, it wasn't even this attorney, do you agree with this person? Do you agree with this person? Can we agree that this is a fair, neutral mediator or a fair, neutral evaluator? That never happened. It
Mhm.
was the court's going to order whoever they want to appoint, and that's the end of it. It doesn't matter if you like them or they like them, or I didn't know who it was. I looked up a bunch of reviews on Google on this person, and it was a female. And actually one of your other podcasts
Mm.
podcasters was involved with her, and all I read on the reviews was don't participate. She's biased. She
Mhm.
she did this to me. She stole $10,000 from me. Um, and I just didn't care. Like, at that point, I didn't need a. There was no reason for me to have a psychological forensic evaluation on me or my child.
Mhm.
I'm in public service, right?
Right.
So I had to get that stuff before I got my job, so they would have known about any psychological issues I had, or if I had any at the time.
Oh,
Clearly,
definitely.
yeah, clearly that wasn't, that they,
Another money-making gimmick.
another money making gimmick, right? And the attorney at the time emailed me, and I remember her saying, "Oh, I got the order," and something to the effect of, um, something about meeting with me, or I don't want to say excited to meet with me or anything like that. Something of that nature. Excuse me. And she said, um, if you could, before I meet with you, we can set up a date. Venmo me the $5,000 to my house in Massachusetts. Venmo me the money to 5,000 to Venmo, or you can mail me a check to my Massachusetts home. And I said, Venmo, like, or mail it to your Massachusetts home. What kind of operation is this?
Right.
I'm not Venmoing anybody any
Right.
money, you know?
And why wouldn't it go to her office, her attorney
Right,
office?
right. Why wouldn't it go to her office? Uh, I guess that's a way for her to not claim it as income. I guess if you have some write you a check
Mm-hmm.
and you put their name on it, you don't have to put their their law firm on it and mail it to their office. I get, I mean, that's just kind of what I was thinking.
Right.
So there was just a lot of things that happened through the whole process that I definitely did not feel. The only win I got was a motion to grant me 2 weeks vacation with my son
Mm-hmm.
during COVID. And then they started putting all these stipulations in there about, um, you know, her attorney tried to get that wiped out as much as he could, and he attached like 150 pages of
Oh,
articles and COVID and you know, no judge or anybody is gonna read 150 pages of that stuff. They don't want to hear it, you know.
right. Yeah, their
Um,
eyes are going to glaze over.
yeah, they're just gonna.
Oh,
I'm not reading 150 pages of it. It was probably even more than that, to be honest with you. Um, but I got 2 weeks of 2 weeks vacation on a motion for my son to visit with his paternal family, who is 500 miles away because my family does not live here in New York.
mhm.
So they don't get to see him. Um, they get like 2% of the time that my son gets to see them as he gets to be with her parents on the maternal side, you know. So my mother and my grandmother and
Mm.
my family get little time compared to the other side. So that was the only win I got, and he even said, "Don't consider this a win." I mean, basically, the judge, said, "Don't consider this a win." I'm like, okay, you know,
Huh.
thanks,
Yeah.
but so I don't know what. There's a lot more in my case. Um, I could go on for hours because it's can't talk about what happened in 3 years and 30 minutes or an hour, you know?
Well, how are you co-parenting now or not?
I don't know if co-parenting is the word.
Hmm.
Um, I kind of call it parallel parenting,
Hmm.
but to this day, since I initiated the divorce, um, I haven't had one time where she's reached out to me and said, "Hey, can I talk to you in person?" Or I would like to be able to talk in person instead of using an app. We use an app, Talking Parents app now.
Hmm.
Everything's recorded. You can't modify anything. I don't know why email was such a big deal, but they really forced Talking Parents. I guess it's similar to
Family Wizard.
yeah, Family Wizard. I think it's similar to that, but it's funny. It's kind of funny to me that we're on an app called Talking Parents when we can't talk as parents to each other, like in person, I mean, doesn't rational and reasonable people talk with each other? Whether you hate the person or not, I mean, I get it. Put your hate aside, right? I mean, that's how I look at it. We
See,
don't like each other,
right.
but at the end of the day, it's the communication that would happen if, as long as we didn't have to use an app, I have to log on an app, and you know, she just refuses to do anything but use that app. You know, I just find it bizarre. It's just bizarre behavior to me. Like this is we're 2 years after this, and we can't. Maybe it's for the better. I don't know. I really don't. To be honest with you, Maryann, I don't really have anything to say. It's I try to ignore. There's a lot that's said about parenting schedules and vacation time and holidays, and it's all in this parenting agreement. Um,
Mm,
if there's a schedule change, I'll message her about a schedule change, or if there's an illness or something of that nature, or something of importance, or an issue at school, we do communicate through talking parents
mhm,
on important issues, and I will communicate with her on important issues.
mhm,
But if I'm going to get questions from her, or just things that just I've already repeated myself 1,000 times over, I'm just not going to answer it. Um, I don't feel the need to repeat myself 1,000 times on a topic. So,
right, right.
um, he's had behavioral issues in school that we've discussed about. There's some things that he's doing that aren't really alarming to me. I feel like they're kind of phases. But if there's issues with our son, um, I'm happy to have any conversation with her about that.
Mm,
I'm just not going to entertain something that I've repeated myself 1,000 times over. You
right.
know, um, you know, she's the mother of her child, and that's as far as I care about it. I don't have anything. 3 years of stuff, 6 attorneys
Mm,
that got involved on my end, only one on her end. So the court system, even though that the courts were closed during COVID,
mhm,
I did try to dismiss the AFC. That was on a conversation that I had with a father's rights advocate at the time, who I still trust. He's very good. I did represent myself 6 months out of the 3 years. Very hard, staying up, 14 hours, 16 hours a day, trying to read stuff, trying to learn how to write motions and whatnot with
mm,
no help. Um,
mm,
and then not participating in the forensic evaluation. In the end, um, I just agreed to the nonsense because I was tired of dealing with it. I wanted it over. My health was declining. I wanted to be done. I wanted to try to move on in my life. I felt if I wasn't going to do it now, um, while I was probably able to, that I don't know if I would have recovered from it. I'm still not recovered. I
mm,
don't know if I'll ever be recovered financially. They'll sit there and say that, I agree to child support of $1,300 a month. But that wasn't agreed to. That was just because her attorney wouldn't agree to anything less.
mm,
And there was no compromising, you know? And the attorneys that I had at the time wouldn't put their foot down and say, that's
mhm,
unreasonable for your client. She lives at home with her parents, has no living expenses,
mhm,
cut her hours, and now she wants twice as much as what it actually costed for the both of them during the marriage. So I just, I was just done with it. I had enough of it. And in the end, the judge said, because I dismissed the AFC because I didn't participate in the forensic evaluation, because I wasn't playing along with their nonsense,
Mm-hmm.
that I was going to pay half her legal fees, which was $58,000.
Oh.
Um, and they put a money judgment on me for that with 9% interest that accrues each month, or I think it's each month, um, if it's not paid. I'm sorry, I don't have $58,000 to give anybody.
And that's
I
with
was
interest.
That's with interest and it's
Oh.
accruing. So the money that I had that I was able to have to pay attorneys at the time was because I was left some inheritance from my father who passed away in
Mm.
2009. So my father was killed in a car accident. Had to deal with his whole estate. That took a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I had to sell a lot of assets. So I had some money from that, which is what I paid the attorneys with, which was essentially gone
Mm.
after 3 years, right? So, you pay one attorney $26,000, and you pay another one $7,500, and you pay another one $6,000, you pay
Mm-hmm.
another one this, and then you get hit with, um, you know, uh, alimony on top of that. So they garnished it out of my paycheck,
Oh.
essentially $2,300 a month, which I had to pull out of my 457 at the time just to be able to pay my mortgage, right? So all this nonsense, all this
Mm-hmm.
stuff that goes on during a divorce that people have to do to survive, it's 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 unconscionable. I know I'm not the only one. Um, but it drained me financially, and it's I'm not recovered from it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I have to work 24 hours of overtime a month just to break even.
Oh.
Um, so, am I paying my bills? Yes. But is it hard? Yes. But my focus is being there for my kid,
Mm-hmm.
being a good dad, being the best that I can possibly be, and trying to move on in life and not entertain, you know, um, any conflict between me and my ex,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think that's what you have to do.
Mm-hmm. How long do you have to pay alimony?
That's a good question. I mean, in New York State, it's so the child's 21 or emancipated. Either he gets enrolled in the military, or he has a full-time job, um, or there's some type of change in circumstance.
So, like the alimony you pay her, but not
Oh, the
child.
alimony. I'm sorry, that was for child support. The alimony stopped,
Oh,
but
good.
but based on 3 years, she was only entitled to get up to like 6 months, 6 to 8 months, I think.
Hmm.
So I ended up paying like over $900 a month in alimony for like 2 years. So it ended up being like nearly $22,000 in alimony for 2 years, because it lasted up until a parenting agreement or the end of the action was ended, or the settlement was ended, right? So I was entitled to get a reimbursement from that, but child support collection never gave me anything. I wrote them an email, several emails about it. That never happened. The only way to get it was an order, um, was to have an order sent to child support collection to get a refund. I think the refund was around I overpaid in child support. Like I gave her money on top of, I ended up giving checks
Mm-hmm.
to her when I didn't even have to. That totaled to about 7,000, and
Mm-hmm.
then I overpaid or overpaid alimony for like I think it was like a year and a half. I overpaid alimony, but they wouldn't stop it. They wouldn't stop it,
Oh,
so
God.
it just kept getting garnished out of my paycheck. And then I never got a credit for it. Like then, you don't get a credit for that kind of stuff unless you submit a motion, go back into court, have them send it to. I mean, it's just a process. At the point after 3 years of dealing with this stuff, you're just done. You don't
Right.
care at the point. Nobody's going to help you. The attorneys don't give a crap.
Mm-hmm.
You're emotionally, physically, financially drained from it. You know, you're you have depression and anxiety, and that stuff I never had before. Uh, PTSD to a
Mm-hmm.
certain level, I guess.
Oh, yes.
All these things that emotionally and physically just break you down. It's
Mm-hmm.
and I know I'm not the only one. It happens like this is just unfortunately people need to understand this is what's going to happen when you end up in the court system. And I don't know how to I don't know how you have to have a team. You have to have a team of people that you can talk to, take a break on the weekends when the courts are closed to go do something that you enjoy to try to take your mind off something because you think about it 24/7.
Oh, you do. Definitely. It's
Right?
terrible.
I mean, you went through it, and so it's definitely something that's you deal with. You just don't stop thinking about it. I don't stop thinking about it even 2 years later. It's still I feel like I'm reliving it every day almost. Like it affects me that much.
It's haunting in
Like
some
I
ways.
have a problem going to my. I see the mail lady driving around delivering mail out here, and I get anxiety from just seeing the mail lady because of how many uh of the letters I would receive from the AFC. Uh, the one guy that came here to serve me papers, I get um, uh, notice secures because my ex is after me for $10 or $15 on a copay that I she didn't get the check in 30 days or 15 days or whatever. It all like I'm like, oh, what's
Oh,
not what's next?
right. Right. Oh, I
Who
had
would ever thought you would
yeah.
get anxiety from seeing the mail lady come in and
Oh,
delivering mail?
I can identify. I was so afraid of the mailbox. I had to have someone on the cell phone with me to go walk out there because I knew what was in there.
Right, right. You
Ah,
just and it even to this day, like getting receiving emails. I had to change my email tone because the last tone was giving me anxiety every time I heard it, and I'm like, I have to change it to something soothing.
mm-hmm.
It sounds stupid, but I had to change it for a while, and now I have a different tone, but I'm getting anxiety from this one, so I might need to change it again.
See,
You
this
know,
is what happens, which I'm glad you came on the podcast to talk about these things that can affect you so deeply.
yeah. I don't know what the answer is. Um, you just you have to be you have to be mentally strong, and
Mm-hmm.
because I know that there's other people that are fighting in the system and a lot longer than me. They're in it for 5 years, they're in it for 7 years, and they're not seeing their kids. And that's truly an injustice.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you know, I was at I was in White Plains a few days ago, and there was a statue of Martin Luther King Jr. and it's saying that had something to do with an injustice in America or in the court is an injustice to America or something of that nature.
Mm-hmm. Everywhere. Mm-hmm.
And that's such a right, and it's just not New York; it's every state, Texas, Ohio, Carol, everywhere. That statement is you know is out there in front of them, yet behind those buildings, they don't want you to have any cameras there. They don't want you to have any recording.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want you. They'll throw you and lock you up for recording in the courtroom.
Yes. Yes. That's why I think family court should just be abolished. You cannot reform corruption. When you've got everybody, like you said, they're all playing in the same sandbox and they all know each other, they all party together. And that was true in my case. It's everywhere.
Right.
So it should just be
Yep.
abolished and just take it to civil court. And a parent can have a 6-person jury if they want.
Right. Well, there should be juries. I
Mm.
mean, there should be juries and divorces, because there's evidence, like video evidence, that you can't submit video evidence unless you go to a trial. And even if you do go to a trial in family court, you don't have a jury.
Right.
So, you know, I can tell you that they're gonna dismiss the evidence as admissible, saying that, I mean, there are rules of evidence in New York State. You can look them up, right? Um, but if you were to try to do your own trial, which is, oh,
Yeah.
I don't know anybody personally that has done their own trial except one person in Washington State, but they submit you, so you don't have the evidence to show. They just submit you into, defeat, and
Right.
just say, oh, well, the parties agreed to a settlement. I mean, give me a break,
Right.
right? What they're gonna say.
Right. And no due
Submit you.
process.
Yep. And then you can't come after them for any error because you agreed to a settlement,
Mm.
right? I
Or
mean,
yeah, I mean, I ran I ran my custody trial because my kids wanted 50-50, which we had been for 11 years. I don't know why all this stuff had to happen. But anyway, so I was getting ready and the judge walks out and he asked me if I had paid the opposing attorney $1,500 for an appearance fee at the conciliatory office in the basement so we could have this hearing. And it's like, well, no, I didn't even get a bill from him. And so the judge just picked up the whole massive file and he just walks off. It's like, where are you going? And then I said, Your Honor, my children are being neglected. He just kept going. No due process.
right. I would not advise anyone, and this is my own experience and from everybody that I've been talking, I would not advise anybody to communications with an attorney with someone, if you decide to do it, God forbid. But
Yeah.
I heard there are a few decent ones out there.
Mhm.
But if you do, all communications should be through email. I would not speak over the phone with anybody over the phone. Me personally, because one, it's not recorded, and two, she might, or he or she might say something to you that you might forget.
Mm-hmm.
And so it all should be on a record. It all should be through email, right? Should be through email.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if they got something to say to you, say it through an email. I don't,
Right.
because you're not there to record everything or remember what they're saying, unless you're jotting notes down. But even then, uh, man, I don't trust anybody. I don't trust the attorneys to have communication with
Mm-mm.
them. If you can't have uh, honesty and transparency, then you don't need them. Then you don't use them.
Right.
And any time too in these court proceedings that I was in, when it would be virtual Zoom. It wasn't being recorded, maybe a few times
Mm-hmm.
when it was important to them, but on some of the topics and issues, it was not recorded. There wasn't a stenographer,
Right.
you know, being attached to the Zoom meeting. It was just between attorneys and the judge and myself or whoever. There was no. I would never agree to that. If there's going to be no court record or transcript of that, then I don't want to be involved in it, because transcripts from all accounts, from what I have heard, are very important to getting some
Mm.
due process, right? And if you don't have transcripts, then you don't have a record of anything.
Right.
So
Well,
um
I also tell parents find an attorney that is outside of your city, someone who doesn't play in that same sandbox,
right.
and look elsewhere because if they're in that same city,
Yeah, I
mm,
feel like, to your point, they have a financial gain and interest if you know if you have attorneys that you hire that are around that area.
mm-hmm,
I picked one that was in a different county, but it was, so that didn't help me though, because her attorney, my ex's attorney was in White Plains, and then this guy was in White Plains, and they were buddies. He didn't tell me that. You think they're going to tell you that? Oh yeah, I know the guy. We play golf on the weekends or whatever. You think they're going to tell me that? That's a conflict of interest.
Mm-hmm.
You ain't going to fight for me. He's trying to get everything from me, and you're his buddy. I mean, yeah, I would say 2 counties, away, where
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I even picked a guy, and I had an advocate,
Mm-hmm.
female father's rights advocate, which didn't really pan out to be helpful in the end. She said, "Oh, the toughest attorney that I ever had was a 6'4" black guy. You should look for, something like that." I'm like, all right. So
Mm.
of course I did. Met with him, showed him some orders. Oh, I can't do anything about that. It's an order. You can't do anything about that. Yeah, you can actually. Just because it's an order doesn't mean you can't file um, uh, motions. Man, there was a couple. There's 2 different ones that I'm trying to remember. Reconsideration. It's
Mm-hmm.
basically like a reconsideration motion to reconsider.
Right, right.
Um, and uh, and there was another one. So there's a couple under. It's basically if you look up, New York State motion reconsider, it kind of breaks it down to a couple different ones. But there are ways to go. There are ways to file against orders.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm not talking about appealing an order. I'm just talking about, and of course you have 30 days to file an appeal too.
Right,
So, and my understanding is any order that comes out that you disagree with, you have to file an appeal.
right.
You have 30 days to file an appeal, right? But 30 days or 45 days to file an appeal, but you have 20 days to file a motion to reconsider. So, I mean, there are, whatever. And you're playing under their rules,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't care about their rules. You know,
Because it
they,
only benefits them.
if it doesn't benefit them, yeah, the system is designed to benefit them. It's not benefit you or your child.
Mm.
It's to benefit them. And the laws are so complex in New York State. I don't think anybody knows. They start. Uh, I remember the judge one time, not to try to get off topic. He said in an order that me and my spouse were harassing each other in emails. That never happened.
Mm-hmm.
We,
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't sending her harassing emails. She wasn't sending me harassing emails. She wouldn't even talk to me.
Yeah.
I would get harassing emails from her
Uh,
attorney.
mm-hmm.
I mean, if that's what you mean, but I wasn't sending harassing emails. So what are you doing? Are you cutting and pasting someone else's? You had someone else's case that maybe they did that in their case. So would you just copy and paste it or copy the whole form and just scribbled that, like took out their names and put our names in there and just made it that was facts? No, I never harassed my ex in emails.
Makes you wonder, though,
Yeah. Uh,
Uh,
there's no question that they're not reading every page and making they don't have time. They're so overloaded, and they're so short staffed and so overloaded. They don't have time to go through people's cases.
mhm.
They just cookie cutter certain things and do things their way because there is no accountability.
Right.
There's no oversight to them. There's no accountability to them. They're going to do whatever they want and get away with it because they can, because
Mhm.
there's no accountability. So to be honest, I don't really know. I think the only way to stay out of court is to know who you marry, and
Mhm.
or maybe having a prenuptial agreement before you get married and spell out everything that if something would ever happen, this is how it's going to work.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because and get it notarized.
Mhm.
Um, because, you know, I I will assume that a prenuptial agreement notarized by both parties prior to a marriage is a valid document, is a valid legal document that can be used in case something like this happens, where, you say, no, we're not playing this game. We have a prenuptial agreement, and here's the stipulations and what we both agreed to, and that's how it should be.
Mm-hmm. No,
So,
I think that's wise. It's just very, from what I have, learned from this podcast is that one person in 20 is a sociopath. So you have to be very careful who you meet and who you marry. It's really sad.
I mean, my situation, I feel like it was, I knew the family. I knew the family for years. My ex and I were together for 4 years before we got married. Um, I want to say we total amount of time that we were together was probably about 7 years. You think you would know
Right.
someone's intentions when
Mm.
you're with someone that long, but I guess you don't.
Hmm.
Um, their family, her family loved, by all accounts,
Oh.
loved me. I was, I was over for dinners and holidays and Christmases and
Hmm.
Thanksgivings, and I even got this mug from them.
Oh, this guy is one awesome dad.
Right, I got that as a
Oh.
Father's Day gift. The first year Justin, well, I'm sorry, the first year our child was born. Um, so by all accounts, they saw me, and I don't know what happened.
Mhm.
I can't get in their minds. I think a lot of lies were told about me, and
Mhm.
I'm
Same.
not a perfect person. I'm not going to admit that I'm a perfect person. We all have flaws. Um, but there was no physical abuse. There was no cheating involved. There was no stealing. There was no nothing.
Hmm.
Yeah, we had our arguments, but I kind of was put back into a corner where there were no other options. We Counseling didn't work, mediation didn't work. Um, where do you go from that? I mean, I just I don't know where you turn from that. Where the divorce, I had mentioned in a disagreement or argument we had one night that, all right, maybe it's just our best that we just get divorced then. And there was no, I don't want that to happen. Let's work it out. I love you, yada yada yada. It was bring it. I mean, essentially that's what I was told.
Oh.
So I knew that it wasn't gonna, I never expected to um I never expected to be involved in family court or Supreme Court or New York State Court over in a divorce.
Hmm.
But I had no idea what was coming to me. You just don't. So I know a lot of other fathers out there are fighting, and a lot of mothers are out there fighting, and it's not just a gender thing. It does happen to mothers and fathers. It's more fathers than mothers, but it does happen to mothers, and it's sad. I know a lot of people that I've met at meetings and stuff that it's happened to them, and it's just sad. It's just sad,
Hmm.
um, what people have to go through. It's really it's an injustice in this America. It's an injustice in America that should be talked about all over the place, like in the mainstream media, but it's not. And so I'm thankful to you for having this podcast and writing books to kind of to expose the system, because it needs a complete overhaul. And I agree with you. Family court needs abolished.
Hmm.
The whole system needs to be torn down. What they're doing to parents and their claiming of best interest to children is insane, because the parents that are fighting for their kids, that are involved parents, they were involved from day one. They will always be involved as in their child's life, or being stripped and denied the right to parent. Um, but they can go to their neighbor's house with their kids and have dinner and be around their kids, or you can be at a store and be around other people's kids, or your nephews, your nieces, or whatever. You're not a threat to them,
Right.
but the courts are saying you're a threat to your own kid. Does that
Mm,
make any sense whatsoever?
no. Mm-mm. And they do this all the time.
All the time.
And
Why
that's
are parents fighting to be in their kid's life if they're such a bad parent?
right.
You guys are extorting everything they have for money. It's a money grab, you
It's
know.
their money courts. And
Yeah.
this is why,
And I've heard judges saying that on
yep.
the record. Well, this is a money court.
Right, because I've had Jim Shock on. I don't know if you know him, but he has a podcast called The Shock Wave, and he's been in my books. And his judge said it was a money court,
Yeah.
so they're only after your money. So that's why it
Right.
needs to be abolished. And I'm so glad you and I talked because we covered a lot of ground that people need to know about. And
Yeah.
I'd like to have you come back on again in the future if you like.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I feel so bad for the parents that are out there. Um, I know it's hard. Um, my advice would be, you know, uh, don't stay quiet about this issue. I did for a while because they will tell you in orders you're not to talk about this case, and we're gonna put look what they're doing to President Trump. They put whether you like him or not,
Mhm.
they put gag orders on him so he wouldn't talk about it. I mean, that's just to the extent that they'll go
Mhm.
to silence you because they don't want they don't want they don't want to be exposed. But obviously, if you have, courtrooms where it's not being recorded, you're being threatened jail if you do record. Um,
Mhm.
you're being the retaliation of what they're going to do because you try to record or expose them. They can. I know that they will try. I feel like in some people's cases, because they're pro se and they are exposing them, that it's making it worse.
Mhm.
But if your stuff is over with, even if it's not, I feel like you have a First Amendment right to speak up.
You do.
You
Mhm.
have a First Amendment right to speak up and say the truth about what's going on. All right, they're scared to hear. They're scared to have the truth exposed, and that's my personal opinion of what I've been seeing over the last 4 years. Is they're
Mhm.
scared to be exposed because they know that they're doing wrong by the people.
I agree with you completely. No, I agree. But
Stay strong as parents and you know keep doing what you can. Instead, try to keep your mental health. Try to do something to keep your mental health and your physical health together. It's not easy. It's not easy. And I know you've been through it, Maryann, and all the people that may watch this, or they're scared to talk. I meet people all the time. Yeah, I went through it. Yeah, I got screwed big time. They did this, they did that. What are you doing about it?
mhm.
Are you speaking up about it? Did you like it? Was it a great experience? No? Okay. What are you going to do about it? You
Mhm.
want to change it? Do you want to get protest works? I'm sorry, they work. Look at all the protests that have been going on and cities across this country for years. You get enough people together and protest something, they have no other choice but to hear you. You know, I mean, that's how I feel about it. I don't know. I don't know. I see. We're trying to be peaceful about this issue. We're trying to do things. Obviously, you start. Well, if you burn down buildings, apparently it's okay. If you're certain organizations, but I'm not advocating for violence at all. But being peaceful at rallies and trying to doesn't seem to get their attention very much. I mean, they know they're out there. They
Mhm.
know we're out there. You know,
Right, because there was a rally in White Plains, New York, family court protest corruption yesterday, or I'm sorry, Friday. And my friend Jim Schock was there, and my other friend Tracy Arms were there, and even a reporter showed up. So that's good.
Yeah.
But we need more coverage on this issue so we can get it abolished. That's my
Yeah.
goal. That's my goal in life. But I won't keep you all afternoon. But uh,
No.
and,
Okay. Thank
and
you. I appreciate you having me on, Maryann.
most definitely. And if people want to reach Brad Kopczyk, they can contact me through dismantlingfamilycourtcorruption.com. Don't jump off, Brad, okay? Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these courtrooms. I'm your host, Maryann Petri, and you can find me on Spotify, YouTube. Please like and subscribe. Apple iTunes, iHeartRadio, Google, and other platforms I don't even know about. Again, feel free to buy me a coffee to help keep this podcast going. Thank you, Brad Kopczyk. I totally appreciate you.
Thanks, Maryann. Thanks for having me. And hope all your listeners just hang in there. You know, the truth will be told one day, and I hope everybody that's going through this will reunite with their kids at one point. I'm fortunate to have my son a few days a week when I'm off of work, but it's not as easy for others.
Mhm. I agree. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.